intrigued about, I mean, I've loved Archistar ever since you guys first started and came out, but what I want you to tell us to kick off, because you are a big company that solves lots and lots of stuff, but what's your elevator pitch? How do you summarise what you do?
Yeah, it's interesting that I think, I don't really have an elevator pitch, or it changes all the time. I think it depends who I'm talking to. And there was a lot of discussion about who's your customer, who you're speaking to, and how do you relate to that person. I think that is super important. And you can have in the tech world, it's like, what's your elevator pitch? You got 10 seconds to convince me. I could say something. It's like, I think we help people understand the potential of property. Maybe that's an elevator pitch, but I would probably never use that in like talking to anyone. So it's kind of it's a weird thing, but yeah, we're just trying to streamline processes and make things easier.
What are the key problems that you're solving?
I think that, property is technical, like development, understanding what you can do, understanding zoning, bylaws, design. Like, I'm an architect by background. Like, I know how complicated it is to get all this stuff done. I think if we can help people work through that, understand what's possible, and we're almost reducing the risk of, those decisions you make. We're giving you more information up front. I think that's one of the things that we're solving. But if you look big picture, if we can fast track all these processes, the end result is there will be more housing on the market. There will be more, stock out there. And I think we are making things easier, and we are accelerating the pipeline of things getting out to the market.
Yeah, and I guess if you can put more information up front that people understand, they become more curious and they ask more questions earlier on, which leads to better outcomes the whole way through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think it's the more informed you are, the better decisions you're going to make. And, if we can stop some of the issues that come later on, some of those mistakes, that can actually be very costly later on. So,
So how did you start? Tell us your origin story.
Yeah, I'm an architect by background. I was very interested in tech, like, from the start. I lectured in technology. I started by working for some big architecture companies. I was a tech guru. And then I basically said, look, I'm not going to be an academic. I did 4 degrees, like 10 years at university, but I was never I didn't want to be an academic. I just loved learning. And I think from that point on, I was like, well, what do I do? I saw the industry. There was the adoption of tech in architecture firms. It was a very slow process. So I thought first, let's just teach people how to use tech. So we started with an online learning academy that said, here's how you use BIM, here's how you use Grasshopper and Revit and all this stuff. And then we moved on to say, well, we can just teach people software, or we can actually build stuff that automate processes. So that's kind of where we started, just by looking at what the industry was doing. We consulted a lot, spoke to a lot of people, and just said, we can solve some of these problems, and you just kind of start on the journey and just keep evolving.
Yeah. So your tech is kind of quite broad in the things that it's bringing together, and housing affordability is one of the country's most pressing problems right now. How are you helping solve that issue, or how do platforms like yours help?
Yeah, I think we're playing a small part in it. I don't think we're solving everything, but we just released a report 2 days ago on the potential of granny flats. I don't know if anyone saw that in the media, but we found there's 655,000 houses on the East Coast that you could put a granny flat on, and that's it's not going to solve everything, but it just highlights that, hey, there's zoning there, you can put something there. And I'm traveling around the world and people are saying, my kids are never going to leave the house anymore. They can't afford a property. Maybe this is a solution that you can put a granny flat at the back and put the kids there. And that would be helping, some part of the market. But, just showing people the opportunity, and we're doing a lot more to streamline the process. I think it's playing a bit of a part in.
Well, if only 10% of those 655,000 properties added a granny flat, there would be 65,000 people off waiting lists for rentals or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how you guys are sort of synonymous with using big data and pulling together data sets that were always traditionally very manual in terms of that, planning, regulation and things like that. How do you see that big data could play a role in solving some of these, wicked problems that we're facing?
Yeah, it's like we kind of built that up over time. And I think it was never, when I started this, like I just wanted to build a generative design tool to design buildings. And then everyone said, oh, we need to know what the planning rules are because that would make it so much better because you know what you're designing to. So we went on the journey to start coding up zoning and we thought it was probably very naive that would be an easy task to do.
Yeah, how hard can it be? It's just like code.
So, and New South Wales got pretty good data. So we started here and it's like, well, the whole country will be easy, but it wasn't.
Who was the worst? Name names.
Well, I think, maybe Queensland. Like it's because everything is like kind of split and like, there's no centralized. But I think you kind of just build up and you learn what you need to get together. And I think there's so many different sources of data, but for me, it's not about like, I'll just get, like we could add more data, but it's not just about getting every bit of data you can get. It's what's relevant and what's going to help you make decisions because, you can get, just too much data and it becomes too overwhelming and complex and you can't make decisions. So it's not only just getting the data, but it's what do you do with that and how do you present that in a way that it's going to help people as opposed to just flood them with here's a whole lot of information.
Yeah, it's the insights and what the actions that they need to take as a result. So you've done that now, not just for Australia, but you're expanded into Canada and the US. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's been super interesting. We've done a lot of work for the industry here, got our product out there. We've started to work a lot with government in Australia, and then in Canada, like the city of Vancouver reached out to us and said, hey, we like what you're doing. Can you come and do that for us? So I guess the city of Vancouver brought us over to Canada. Since then, like the same issues we've got here, it's magnified over there. And, there's a lot of funding around fast tracking, permitting and streamlining the process. And, we got a lot of interest from there. The US reached out to us at the same time. So we're now working with the city of Vancouver, city of Austin, but we're probably in discussion with about 50 cities across North America, and we're just getting started there. So,
and are you working with councils or governments here?
Yes, we are. Yeah. So, so we've done a lot of work, particularly with like New South Wales and Victoria, but we will be expanding that out. It feels like maybe the US and Canada are working a bit faster than Australia, although Australia were kind of like the first people to jump onto this and they were excited by it. But I don't know, maybe the populations are bigger over there. They've got a more pressing need maybe.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. And so what are the, you guys are executing to a really huge vision. Do you, when you look at the Australian PropTech space, do you think we're limiting ourselves, like Nigel was saying, like we're fixing ChatGPT for job descriptions when actually we should be maybe expanding our...
I'm deleting that from our roadmap now. No, we weren't doing that. I think, like we've been doing this now for a while and a lot of stuff gets thrown at you and, there's a lot of little things to fix. And this problem is like what we're in is a huge... there's a lot of things to solve. So you can kind of get narrowed in and focus on that. And it almost becomes like you're just developing features and, this all starts to come out. I think you've got to take a step back at some point and say, well, what's actually moving the dial? And we've been, we've done this before where it's like, we like release this, and all of this stuff we work on. And it's like, did that actually do anything? And it's like,
did it move the needle?
Did it move the needle?
Yeah.
And quite often the answer is no. And it's like, well, what will? And sometimes you've got to have those hard questions, but you've kind of almost got to step back a bit and say, what are the things that we need to focus on that's going to do that?
And a question without notice, but what's the hardest thing that you faced as a PropTech entrepreneur?
I think it's a balance. Like you kind of, I'm very much a product tech guy. Like I love solving problems, but it's not just about your product. You know, a lot of the discussion here was about the relationships, the people you know, the people you talk to. You know, you can just make a product and sit behind a computer, but it doesn't mean you're going to get traction or you're going to get it out there. So, you know, there's investors you've got to deal with. If you want to build this at scale, you've got to go and speak to people and make sure that they're, you know, we've got a lot of partners. You know, a lot of people that sponsor here are our partners. Like, that's all relationship work that you can't just, you know, put up a website and say, they're done. Yeah. So it's all the stuff around it that is not just about your product. It's bigger than that, and that takes up a lot more time than you probably think.
Yeah. And so what are the disciplines or techniques that you guys use at Archistar to think bigger?
Yeah, I think we're always thinking big, and you know, whatever we release on the platform is always like 10 steps behind where we're actually at, because we're always thinking ahead. But I'd say that like the best way that I find I keep ahead and talking to people, you know, like these problems are so big that, you know, every time you talk to someone and you're explaining what you do, like they'll come back and you say, oh, have you thought about this? And it's like, whoa, you know, and then that like kind of keeps, you know, the conversation going. And whenever I go out and talk to people, I don't show them what we've done. I show them what we're working on, because I'm always advancing the conversation. Like if I show you what's on the website now, the app now, it's like, that's old news. It's boring, you know, that's what's there. So it's always like, hey, we're working on this. And then it's like, oh, have you thought about that? You know, and that just keeps it going.
That's fantastic feedback loop. And so, look, just one last one to wrap up, because you're speaking, Data Army have got you hosting of the roundtable. So if you want more time with Ben, please grab him as part of that roundtable. But what's on your roadmap for what is that stuff that you're building now that is exciting?
Yeah, I think, you know, every probably 6 months we're kind of like moving in like further directions out. But if you look at some of the media that we're pushing out now, there's a big focus on the permitting process, development applications, and I think we've done a lot of work in highlighting opportunities, but there's a big bottleneck once you've got that opportunity. How do you get that certified? How do you go through the development application process? So we're getting a lot of attention on the tech we built around that over the last couple of years. So
if we did that, how much faster could we build new homes?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, there is depending on the size of the building, you know, like there's a long delay from when you've designed the building to getting your application approved.
Yeah. Then
there's the whole construction cycle. Like that's got its own issues in itself.
And that's years long at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So if we can solve that first part and at least get you to construction earlier, I think that you can plan better, and you can get things in motion and organized. Because I think when there's uncertainty around that first process, like, well, I don't know how long this is going to take, you can't set things in motion, you can't lock things in. So
it makes it more expensive too.
Exactly.
Yeah. So can we look forward to a future where maybe that time frame is cut by 50%, 20%? How much could it be?
It could be I'd love a real-time check, you know.
Okay, awesome.
So yeah.
And what's Archistar working towards?
Like depending on the complexity of the application, like I can see a future where there's a digital certificate and that's your approval. You know, there's obviously more complicated buildings that need a lot more checks, but you know, for small stuff, like I could see that there should be a digital future where you've met all the criteria. It's not that risky to give that approval as long as you build within that spec. Like City of Houston doesn't have any zoning. It's just building code. Like if you build a safe building, you're good to go. You know?
They're cool with that.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for Dr. Ben Coorey.